This is your all spinners all the time radio show, the 9 to noon radio presentation on KFAN and KFAN.com.
Since I met you, I've begun to feel so strange.
Aw. Hey, in Seattle tomorrow night for the first preseason game, 7 o'clock for the pregame, then 9 o'clock for the boom. For the Vikings and Vikings in Seattle preseason from Lumen. Let's not forget this time last year we had the Aussie punter Jordan Berry with the nice end over end Aaron Bennett, but then the plus size punter rolled in from Tulane, and I mean he was just capturing the hearts and minds of football fans, and wearing a weird number, and Ryan Wright won his opportunity to have a career in the NFL. And last year, through the course of the season, may not have the touchback number right, but I'll be close. Ryan had like 32 punts inside the 20 and only one touchback. So it was a fantastic run for him. He did have a punt blocked, and it was returned for a touchdown in the Indianapolis game when they were getting drilled 33-0 at halftime, and then came back and put the dirtiest of L's on Jeff Saturday. And he also threw that pass at Tottenham Hotspur to Speedy, Jalen Naylor. So our punter is multifaceted, and he won the right to become multifaceted this time last year. Now, from a kicking standpoint, this Jack Podlesny from Georgia, from what I've seen, he's been okay during camp. Greg Joseph mostly has been terrific. The first night practice, he had some struggles, and they will be on display tomorrow night too, trying to win the favor of Matt Daniels, the special teams coordinator, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the GM, and the head coach, Kevin O'Connell. And then you get to the kick and or punt return. Now, Kene Nwanwu, I'd be shocked if he played because he'd been missing practice for the better part of the last week. But Brandon Powell has one punt return touchdown in his career, and it took place against the Minnesota Vikings. Jalen Reagor has one punt return touchdown in his career, and it took place when he was with the Eagles, and he did it at Lambeau Field. So I would bet Reagor plays tomorrow night, Powell most likely. So those are some of the innuendo and or nuance-laden related scenarios from a special team standpoint for tomorrow night. And speaking of that, presser playback time, Matt Daniels, the special teams coordinator, spoke recently.
So excited to get ready to go to work. A lot of guys fulfilling their childhood dreams, putting on an NFL uniform and getting the opportunity to compete. You know, there's a transition. We talked about it from shorts to pads, and, you know, how certain guys start to look and certain guys start to stand out. But there's also a transition from practice to the game, and when the big bright lights come on. So I'm excited to see what guys start to show up in the game, in the heat of the moment, when you're under the pressure, when the lights are on. You know, who wants to step up when big plays are needed. You know, who are the guys that are going to stand out and be the ones that's going to have an impact.
Matt, do you expect the kickers to rotate reps or get one guy a whole game?
Yeah, we have a system in place to make sure that both guys are getting the amount of work that they do need. Greg Joseph, he'll go ahead and take a good brunt of the work to start off the Seattle game, and I'll make sure that we get Jack involved in it as well. But both guys will have an equal opportunity because, like I said, it is a true competition. I want to make sure that both guys are getting that true opportunity to display their skills.
Do you have a timeline in mind on when you'd like that competition to be settled?
No timeline in mind, actually. You know, we're just going to kind of let it play out. You know, in football, things always work themselves out. And so, you know, we'll just keep going. Right now, it's going at pretty good. Both guys are really playing at a really, really elite level. I love the way Jack is hitting the ball right now. I love the way Greg is hitting the ball right now. And so we'll continue to see, again, how they transition over from the game, from the practice to the game. And, you know, it'll be Jack's first time going out, you know, kicking in an NFL stadium out west in Seattle. We'll see how he responds to the elements, to the crowd, you know, to the noise. And so I'm excited to see what that looks like for him.
Have you seen Greg kind of handle another kicker being in the building?
Say it again, Dan?
How have you seen Greg kind of handle another kicker?
He's been the same old. You know, quite frankly, this is a position that Greg's been in, quite frankly, his entire career. I mean, he's never been in a camp to where he hasn't had another kicker that he's competing against. And so he knows what his routine is. He understands what his process is, and he understands what he has to do in order to win the job. And so he's been the same consistent self throughout this process.
How do you evaluate the younger guys, like you say, under the lights? Do you look for just a clean execution? Do you look for something maybe a little more heady that you've worked on?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of mental and physical from a standpoint, right? You know, I always talk about when things don't go as the playbook says it should. Are you able to problem solve on the fly, or do you get frantic and find yourself folding under pressure? And so, you know, I'm looking to see, well, how creative can you get? How do you respond when things might not go your way? How do you respond when you might have a bad rep? Does it end up being a trickle effect to where you have one bad rep and it leads to 3 bad reps? You know, do you respond the right way when, you know, quite frankly, you might not win a vice rep as a gunner, and next thing you know, you're on the other opponent's sideline bench, you know, getting worn out. You know, how do you respond that next rep? And so I'm just looking for these guys to come out to compete at the highest level and, you know, just put it all out there.
From Brandon Powell, I guess, how much can you evaluate they can't turn over, and how much you want to see in the game?
Yeah, you know, I'm going to give JR, Powell, Thayer. We just added N'Keal Harry to the mix, and so I want to give all those guys an opportunity to be able to return the football over these next 3 games, because I think it's important for someone to start to stand out in that group as we get ready to kind of focus and turn the leaf over to Tennessee and Arizona and get ready for week 1 against Tampa. And so I want to make sure I give all 4 of those guys an opportunity to be able to return the football. You know, a lot of those guys between JR and BP, I have a good idea of who they are and what they're about, but I'd be interested to see how they're able to use their game and to kind of bringing it together for what we'd like to do on our end.
Is Jordan Addison still in that mix, or is his role on offense?
Yeah, Addison is not in the mix, I would say. He's a guy that will be more so in a reserve role in certain situations that we might want to put back there. But right now, his sole focus is going to be on the offense. But not to take away, he's still back there catching punts. You know, we still see him as a viable option in the case that, you know, someone might ends up getting hurt. You know, he'll fill in right there where needed.
From a special teams perspective, how important have punt returns come? Because the league obviously is trying to kill kick returns, and special teams can only impact a game with a sudden change of field. Now, largely through punt returns. Is there more of an emphasis there now? I know it's tough to do, but that's where you're going to get way more returns now than the kicking game.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you look at it, there's no other play in football where you're averaging 40 yards. You know, we're talking flipping field position, huge momentum swings within the football game. And so, you know, you look at it, I wouldn't say there's a bigger emphasis because of the kickoff rule that just got installed this year. I would just say it's same routine per usual. You know, obviously you want to try to find ways to set up guys to return the football, to put them in a position to where we're not getting so many fair catches. And so maybe we might change a little bit of things schematically, but for the most part, it's same old.
That kickoff rule, do you expect teams to act differently in the preseason at all?
In the preseason, I do not. I think because guys want to see guys compete, and for them to be able to get an idea of who can block, who can get off blocks, who can run and hit, who can tackle in space. You know, this is an evaluation period that we're going through in training camp. And so I wouldn't see a change happening during the preseason. And you'll probably see it more so, you know, when the regular season rolls around and guys are a little bit more cautious about, you know, who's out there, you know, injuries coming into play. So for the preseason, I would imagine that, you know, most of the balls will be getting returned.
We've seen Racine running around out there now. He was obviously around here the whole time throughout his recovery. What stands out about the way he conducted himself through that?
Yeah, I think you look at Lou from where he was at last year as a rookie to where he is now, being under guys like Cam Bynum, Josh Metellus, Harrison Smith. Lou is starting to understand and know what it looks like to be a pro. And that's the smallest thing is note-taking in the classroom. Having a good understanding of when he needs to show up in the building, how he needs to take care of his body, what he needs to do post-practice, and to make sure that he's fine-tuning all of the small skill sets that he does need to work on. And so for Lou, unbelievable. I can't emphasize enough what he had to do to get back to where he is now. He's looking more explosive. He's really starting to learn the new defense and all the intricacies within it. He's meeting with me on a daily basis. He's meeting with Coach Durante Jones on a daily basis. And so he understands and knows where he's at, and he understands where he needs to go in order to fulfill and maximize his true capacity of what he can do and what his talent is.
Anything else for Coach?
Cool.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate y'all.
Special teams coordinator Matt Daniels talking to the press yesterday, a presser playback, and his PA mentioned very important into tomorrow night's festival against the Seahawks, whether it's punt return battles, it's the kicking action. A lot of things changed through the preseason last year. Maybe there's change in the air in 2023 as well. A couple segments left to go, 9 to noon. You'll hear from offensive coordinator Wes Phillips later on, but some camp cuts. We look around the NFL now.
The Fan.
Ooh, Bikes Bites Part 2 provided by Stoked.
Why not?
What do you got?
This is NFL League-wide edition. Love Stoked barbecue pellets, and any opportunity I get to sing the praises of my buddies from Caledonia, Minnesota.
Same.
Home-raised, all white oak pellets. And here's Eric Bieniemy talking about Eric Bieniemy. He's very intense.
Yes, I am intense. And I would be afraid, too, to start if I didn't know him. Eric Bieniemy is who he is.
Third person alert.
Eric Bieniemy knows how to adapt and adjust. Eric Bieniemy is a tough, hard-nosed coach. But also understand, I'm going to be their biggest and harshest critic, but I'm also their number one fan because I got their back and I'm going to support them at all times.
You think this is overblown? I mean, there have been conversations for the last handful of years, it feels like. He keeps interviewing and doesn't get the head coaching jobs. By all accounts, he's been a very good offensive coordinator. Andy Reid, probably the magician and the tactician in Kansas City. But all the same, Eric Bieniemy, maybe people don't like the personality, but can't argue maybe some of the success that he's had. You think this is overblown? And as Florio said, Rivera could have handled it differently?
Well, I believe Ron conceded that he should have handled it differently. So that's the old moonwalk, the old Sirwanga copyright bump. Eric went Ricky Anderson on it. Ricky talking about Ricky being Ricky. But Eric's very important to what they're doing with the Washington Commanders, because like something to which you alluded is Andy Reid, it starts and stops with Big Red. So when you're that offensive coordinator, it was kind of like Kevin O'Connell with Sean McVay or Wes Phillips with Kevin O'Connell. It doesn't mean that, certainly it doesn't mean you're insignificant. I mean, you have a major role, but it also is shrouded or clouded with a bit of mystery as to exactly the who, what, where, when, and why of what you did. That's not the case in Washington. And he's working with a quarterback who's very young in Sam Howell and a very nice receiver in Terry McLaurin. So you can tell that kind of like here with Flores, where maybe the low-key private preach has been, everybody thinks we're holding this thing back, let's go show them that we're not. I think that's the case in Washington because of that nice defensive line. And so therefore it's really copyright bump take 2. It depends on whose ox is being gored as to how you can handle coaching like that. I mean, Eric's different. Eric's got some old school to him, very intense, also very honest. So I think he's going to do okay there.
Camp cuts, New England Patriots.
Camp cuts.
There is some hashtag Faith PA and Mac Jones out in New England right now. And it appears that a lot of it, I would actually say almost all of it is Bill O'Brien.
Yeah.
Bill O'Brien, offensive coordinator. This will shock everybody. They actually tried to run offense in New England with a defensive coach last year. And so Bill O'Brien, although the head coaching job down in Houston didn't necessarily go his way, I think he jumped back to Alabama now before going to New England, but he's been a longtime offensive coach.
Well, he's got all the shiny toys, doesn't he?
Would you put some stock in the idea of a resurgence or finally a big growth step in Mac Jones, simply by having Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator, not maybe unlike Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence.
Everybody around the league knows Bill O'Brien can coach offense, and Bill O'Brien is clever and he's creative. Now, how he handles, let's just say, the mood swings of games and practices and, just who he is behind the scenes and how he's treating man and this generation of kid, that only time will tell Davey. I don't know what Mac Jones does well. That's the thing. I don't trust him long, but then again, they don't really have receivers that get down the field. He can move, but he's not Danny Dimes. So I just don't really. He's a scholar of the game and he's super smart. I'm just not exactly sure what identifies Mac Jones. Now Bill can coach offense, so we'll see what he pulls out of old Mac Jones.
Last thing for you, I saw an interesting bit on NFL.com from Greg Rosenthal, and he was digging into some words that Chris Collinsworth on the broadcast during the Hall of Fame game about Deshaun Watson. And here's what he said. Collinsworth said, "It's going to be paramount on Watson to be patient. I'm not sure the Cleveland Browns can make as bold a jump as what he probably would like to see. Spread offenses. Let me take advantage of my ability to run and make plays all over the field. Do I see Cleveland doing that? Maybe, but that's a pretty big leap for them." Now, Greg Rosenthal would go on, and it's interesting and thought-provoking. Jacoby Brissett ran Stefanski's offense more effectively than Deshaun Watson did last year.
Absolutely agree.
And so now into 2023, the marriage and the partnership where it's like, I go 90, you go 10, or 60-40, et cetera, where Stefanski, he wants to use Nick Chubb all freaking day if he can and work around that. Watson wants to operate maybe at his best a little bit differently. How do you see that pairing and how Stefanski can get the most out of Watson?
Great question. I haven't read a lot of Browns related stories about how training camp looks and the feel and stuff like that. Is sourcing it a little bit.
Hey, Mary Kay.
Deshaun's tearing it up. Deshaun Watson is having a really, really, really good training camp. And it's more from it's more the nuance, the huddle presence, the getting in and out of plays, the snappiness that's needed. Now, Kevin added former Vikings offensive coordinator Bill Musgrave to his offensive staff. Bill was hired strictly to create nuance and an intricate approach to the running game.
To shrink the play card.
Because Bill's very good at that. So therefore, if you have Amari Cooper, one of the better route running wide receivers in the history of the NFL, a quarterback who gets it and is better than Jacoby Brissett, an offensive line that it should be better than it is, I think, but they've had injury problems. This should be a very good offense. The play action for the Cleveland Browns should be very, very good. And Deshaun tucks it away nicely, turns his back on the defense, and is a quality play action guy. So it's go time for Deshaun. It's go time for that offense. And it's go time for the calm with the way things developed last year.
Camp cuts.
Speaking of offense, Wes Phillips recently spoke, and our next presser playback will be getting the thoughts of Minnesota Vikings offensive coordinator Wes Phillips after we chat for a smidge. Then we wrap up 9 to noon at FM 100.3 KFAN.
The Fan.
Final segment brought to you by Casey's Here for Good. No rap today, but Casey's always brings you this time of the show, 9 to noon, and whether it's the 89-cent medium fountain and frozen drinks, all summer long, you're using that to wash down the amazing thin crust pizza you're eating from Casey's. So we absolutely love you, Casey's Here for Good. Thank you for bringing us the final segment, 9 to noon.
Now, the earlier in the radio show, and I definitely think it elicits conversation, maybe with Nordo tomorrow or Church Friday or some iteration of it. Mike Florio from ProFootballTalk.com a couple of hours ago, I'm not going to say he dropped a Woj bomb, but like we were talking about Justin Jefferson and being ranked second best receiver in the NFL by his constituents, his cohorts, former fellow players in the NFL. And Mike said,
you want the audio?
That yes, that there are murmurs
Oh my gosh!
around the NFL, and it sounded like this.
Well, one reason to
pull back on that for now is you want to get him signed. And one of the philosophical approaches for front offices and coaching staffs, don't heap excessive praise on a guy that you're negotiating a long-term contract with, because that gets printed out and laminated and slid across the table like the old paper football when it's time to exchange offers. But everybody knows where Jefferson stands. Everybody knows what he is. We've written in the past about the Vikings' habits of structuring contracts that could complicate this negotiation because they don't like to have guarantees that are full and complete in the future years of a contract. They like to have it vest as they go. They may have to make some changes here to accommodate Justin Jefferson. There's a hot take floating around, and I don't believe it, but some people think that they're going to squat on Jefferson and put him in a trade package next year to get that franchise quarterback that they want. That the thinking is a franchise quarterback is going to take you a lot farther than a great receiver. I can't imagine that happening, but until he signs a long-term contract, we have to at least put on the radar screen the possibility that if they do want to make that move up to the top 5 and get one of the top quarterbacks next year and have a guy who's your guy for 10, 15 years or longer, that's one way to do it. That's one way to get from the teens all the way up to the top if you can dangle a JJ.
You know how reporters and columnists are? They want the controversy. They want the negativity.
Trade JJ, get up to a quarterback spot. So buy Kirk Cousins, buy Justin Jefferson, a chance at when you make a move like that, the quarterback you're getting needs to be Mahomes-esque. I mean, you can say Hurts-esque. I'd take Burrow-esque, but nevertheless, or Hurts-esque too. But I mean, it has to be that. Or if it's not, and there's a problem with it, holy cow, have you set yourself back?
Yeah.
I mean, because Justin's the most popular player on the team. So, I mean, Billy's and Johnny's and Christy's and Susie's and Tamika's and Antoine's, well, they're undoubtedly going to love the new quarterback coming in eventually, but they already love the gritty. They already do the gritty.
Do you think he's got to be the most popular player on the Vikings since peak Adrian?
Yes.
I just can't think of...
Yeah, polarizingly popular from a national appeal who scores a lot. Like Hitman's incredibly popular. Lots of tutus at Vikings training camp, but I see what you're saying. Since peak Adrian.
I'd go Randy last 25 years. Randy into Adrian into JJ. And I found this. So Mark Wilf, I played some audio of him talking about Kirk Cousins' contract. We're going to leave that to the money men. We're going to leave that to Kwesi, Brzezinski, et cetera. He was asked, and I think Judd kind of led him down this path a bit, but it was a thoughtfully worded question. Kind of on JJ's contract, maybe the Wilfs will stay involved on this one. Here's what the owner said.
I think that's fair to say, and we certainly Kwesi and Rob Brzezinski and Coach, everyone's working together on the contract, but we're certainly aware of it at the magnitude of this one, and in general, we're certainly aware, certainly involved, and Justin Jefferson, we want him to stay as a Minnesota Viking.
You know how reporters and columnists are? They want the controversy. They want the negativity.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's dramatically different than what we heard about the quarterback.
That's the
curveball to the vanity that is. There's a hot take bouncing around, and I don't completely buy into it, that the Vikings will trade Justin Jefferson. And by the way, they're going to have to give up more first-round picks. And to get up and get a quarterback like that, even if JJ's involved, it's still currency and mass.
I bet you could. I mean, just playing stupid games right now, just floating stuff.
They're playing baby games.
If they're baby games,
Thank you.
If they're in the mid-late teens,
they're in the mid-late teens, this season sucks.
Correct, but then JJ and this 18th overall pick could get you up in some of that territory. True, but you're going to have to probably, to your point,
if you think you're in the mid-teens, you don't go 1-20 on Daniil.
No, you don't. And there's no way this offense can be bad where you're going to win 6. Now, can you win 12? I mean, that's just so it's.
Their over-under's 8.5.
I understand that, and I feel over kind of playing the game last night. And I love playing where you're just week 1 win, week 2.
Yeah,
it's Philly. It sucks. They're throwing unopened beer cans at fans. Loss. Week 3, oh, well, we got to beat Herbert, So you play that game, and I always land on the 10 spot.
Yeah, it feels like a 10 or 11 to me.
Like for this team to have the same magic and I guess we're getting off a topic from JJ, but we're definitely getting into it tomorrow. I think for this team to have the same magic that they had a year ago, it has to be we beat the Chiefs at the wire. We have to have one of those moments where Niners roll in here and they're full of swagger and the lights are bright and we just smack them. I mean, for this season to replicate kind of those weird stratospheric vibes of a year ago, one of those things has to happen, and I think earlier than late. And then we're talking about that 12-win echelon for the Purple.
Until proven otherwise, the identity of the 2023 Minnesota Vikings is that of offense. And the coordinator is Wes Phillips, who, via the presser playback, talked about the offense and began with this.
Much more the mental. The amount of kind of exotic pressures and how that can change from week to week depending on the defense you're playing. It's really challenging for a guy who maybe some of these guys came from a system where they're going fast, they're getting pretty clean looks. It's hard to get into all this type of stuff. And, these defensive coordinators know how to scheme you. They know how to put pressure on your protections as well as get the back matched up sometimes in unfavorable matchups. But, they can learn the physical part, and they have the ability to do that if they use technique. But definitely the mental part, there's a lot of different calls that are being made, and having to process that really quickly is tough.
You focused on it Thursday. Is it mostly player evaluation, or is it on the group collectively?
I think we'd like to see a clean operation from the group, particularly starting with the quarterbacks, getting in and out of the huddle, just the whole group in general. But it's definitely more of an evaluation process. You're playing with, unfortunately, some guys aren't going to make the football team. You hope that all these guys make it somewhere in the NFL, but we can only keep so many. But there's going to be some plays that don't look quite so good, but hopefully we can see some guys rebound the next play and kind of make up for it and show us that they're resilient that way after they make a mistake. I think it's the individual. You see some teams that have a real philosophy in the draft of, especially early in the draft, where we only take guys from big schools that have played in big games in front of big crowds. But then you see guys from small schools who come to the NFL and they become stars right away. So it's just kind of each individual guy. We'll see how they respond. It's certainly their first NFL experience, these rookies. So I'm sure they'll be a little nervous, but they'll realize once they get out there, it's just football.
Russ, what have you seen from Josh Oliver and just the way that he's fit in? And I guess how do you balance doing a lot of the 11 personnel that you guys have always done with now mixing in someone who would be a weapon like that?
I think you have a guy like Josh, and you have to use him. His physical ability, teams generally kind of think they have a win there, particularly these 3-4 teams with these big outside backers, or if you're lining up a defensive end over a tight end all the time, you feel like, okay, we won there. Now what's the other problems in the offense? And that's really not the case with Josh. He's big, he's strong, he's physical, he's athletic, and then he's shown that in the pass game he's got really good hands, and that's going all the way back from college. And he's super long, so his catch radius is really big.
That way, it seems like he's making a good catch every day.
Yeah, when he came out from San Jose, they didn't really use him as a blocker. I remember grading him, and it was kind of like, yeah, he's big, he's long, he can run. I think he ran the 4.5s, and he said, but he was probably about 250 pounds at that time. And he said, wow, he's got some talent, but we're going to have to teach him how to block, teach him how to go in line. I didn't know that he'd end up being over 270 pounds, but he's really, worked hard. He loves football. He's a team guy. He's been a great pleasure to have. I think just the operation is number one. It's hard to we get the play clocks out here and we try to push these guys and try to let them feel kind of how fast it gets in and out, how fast the play calls come. We have some move the ball periods. We have some more today where he's going to be able to feel that a little bit. But you want to just get in and out of the huddle. You don't have time to walk up and just kind of get a view, big picture view. You got to get things going. You got to get the operation going. You got to lead the team, run the offense. And part of that is the operation, and the other part is just executing one play at a time. There's going to be bad plays in there, but can he bounce back, and show us that, it doesn't faze him.
Coach Markov just announced the Bud patches and other ways the team plans to honor Bud Grant. I was curious as to your thoughts of your time with Coach Grant, if that extra, having grown up around the NFL.
Well, he's a legend. I did grow up around the NFL, and I was always watching NFL films, and I was well aware of Coach Grant, and Coach Grant and my grandfather actually knew each other as well, coached against each other, and had a friendship as well. So to be able to actually get to meet him and talk and hear some of those stories, we certainly lost a legend, but I'm glad we're going to honor him with that patch.
The younger running back room, how much does it kind of add having a veteran fullback like C.J. Ham to kind of help those guys in?
C.J. Ham, not only a veteran fullback, but one of the leaders of our team, one of the most consistent, unselfish, along with being talented. You really can't put a value on what he means to this team. Just when his name comes up in a meet, guys are cheering across the team because he kind of touches all groups with the special teams that he's been involved in for a long time, and then of course what he does for us on offense. He's a special human on top of being a really good football player. We're lucky to have him. I think his life, he went about the right way, and that carried over to coaching. Everyone who met the guy and spoke to the guy and had a chance to be around him, everything is positive about what kind of man he was. And I just think that rubs off if you're genuine with players. If you don't try to be someone else. I'm sure he worked for some guys that were totally different, especially at that time, kicking them in the butt and grabbing them by the face mask. But you just got to be yourself, and obviously the talent and work ethic that he had on top of it. But the person shows up first to these guys, and if they trust you and they care about you as a person, then they'll usually work for you.
Kevin had Brandon Powell back for a year in LA. How did that familiarity maybe make it, or you could envision what kind of role you'd like to have him in on this team?
Well, we knew what kind of we got him mid-season in LA and really his role was as our punt returner. But we did get to know him personally and see him work on the football field. So we knew what we were getting from those aspects. And he's a extremely hard worker. He's tough. He's a former running back. In his history, not in the league, but he was a running back. You can see the toughness, not the biggest guy, but some of the run stuff where he's got to go down and dig out safeties. Maybe not the best scripted play yesterday, but he was trying to down block on a crack scheme on Davenport, but he battled. He battled and battled and battled. And then he's making plays in the pass game. He's extremely quick. You can see the return ability showing up in the receiving arena as well. So he's had a really good camp, and we're happy. We're happy with him thus far.
Last couple for Coach.
Just how fast he's been able to absorb and learn the offense. he made a few mistakes, and he'll continue to make a mistake here or there, but he doesn't make the same mistake twice. He's a real pro. Not all rookies kind of have that steady demeanor about themselves. He wants to be great, and he's showing it more and more the more reps he gets that he can be a really good player.
It's good on routes too, Wes, as far as the routes. It looks like he runs pretty crisp routes for his age.
He's very smooth, knows how to separate, knows how to work edges on guys. You know, he's never running right down the middle of guys, and he can cut on a dime. So it's pretty exciting. Really, we see Blake as a versatile player. You know, if you need some guys like that on your team, and obviously he played some left tackle last year, and he's gotten a lot of reps at left guard now, and he's played right tackle as well already in this camp. So, you know, when you have a guy like that, where you got to be, if you're not working with that first group, you have to have something to you. You got to be a guard center, or you got to be a guard tackle. And he's proven that he can go in games and function at all those spots, and not only function but play well. We have not this year. Center's kind of a different animal, but he's certainly smart enough and talented enough to be able to be in there.
That's Vikings offensive coordinator Wes Phillips with the media yesterday. And that does indeed wrap up 9 to noon tomorrow, 7 p.m. pregame, and then 9 p.m.-ish right here on your home for Vikings football. We finally have a game. Preseason, but still a game. PA will be in Seattle, of course, so I will handle 9 to noon duties tomorrow. We will check in with the host, but also Ben Lieber, Pete Bursich, breaking down into the game and handle some business on a Thursday tomorrow, 9 to noon. Thank you so much for listening, and the program is next. It's The Fan.
Making a wave when you can. Temporary layoffs. Good times. Easy credit rip-offs.
9 to noon.
Scratching and surviving. Good times.
This is an old-fashioned ass-kicking right here.
Good times. Ain't we lucky we got 'em.
And that's a fact.
If it's good news or money, leave a message.
Podcast today's